Robert Redford was never just an actor. He was the face of classic American cinema, the man who gave us unforgettable roles in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting. Yet away from the bright lights of Hollywood, he was simply a man who searched for meaning, for peace, and for love that could survive time. In the final years of his life, that love came from one woman, Sibylle Szaggars. She wasn't just his wife, she was his closest friend, his confidant, and the person who stood by him when the cameras were gone. To the world, he was a legend. To her, he was Robert, a man with fears, regrets, and quiet dreams. Their story began far away from Hollywood glamour. Sibily was an artist from Germany, and she carried with her a sense of creativity and spirit that caught Robert's attention. They met in the 1990s, at a time when Redford was already well known but also weary of the pressures that fame brought. Sibily wasn't part of his industry, and maybe that was why he was drawn to her. She saw him as a person, not a star. Over the years, their bond grew deeper. Robert had been married before, and he had known both the joy and the pain of family life. But with Sibily, it was different. She brought him peace, something he admitted he had long searched for. Together, they built a life in Utah, away from the chaos of Hollywood. Their marriage in 2009 was quiet, intimate, and full of sincerity. Robert was already in his 70s then, but he looked at Sibily the way a young man looks at the love of his life. Their relationship wasn't about glamour, it was about understanding. He had built an empire in film, but with her, he was content to simply live. Friends of the couple often said that Robert softened in Sibily's presence. He had always been a strong-willed man, private and reserved. But with her, his guard lowered. He laughed more. He spoke of art, of nature, and of the meaning of a simple day. Sibily was an artist in her own right, and Robert often said that her creativity inspired him to look at life differently. As the years went by, Robert faced battles with his health. He had known tragedy in his family, including the heartbreaking loss of his first child, Scott, many years earlier. Those memories never left him, and in his quieter moments, he confessed to Sibily that pain still lingered. But instead of letting it consume him, he used it as a reminder to treasure the people he loved. For Robert, the final chapter of his life wasn't about awards or applause. It was about love, and that love shone brightest when he was with Sibily. They spent evenings walking through their garden, watching the Utah skies turn gold at sunset. To him, those moments were more valuable than any red carpet he had ever walked. But as his health began to decline, Robert knew he had to face something no one can avoid, the reality of time. He was a man who had lived a full life, yet he wanted to leave behind something more personal than films or fame. He wanted Sibily to know his final wish, the truth that lived deep inside him. Those who knew Robert say that in the final weeks of his life, he became more reflective than ever. He spoke less of Hollywood and more of home, family, and the world he was leaving behind. The only person he shared those thoughts with was Sibily. She listened, holding his hand, knowing that every word carried the weight of a goodbye. Robert's final wish to Sibily was not about himself, it was about her. He had spent decades giving himself to the world, but in his last days, he only wanted to make sure she would be okay. He told her that she should continue to paint, to create, to live fully, even when he was gone. He asked her not to fade into grief but to honor him by carrying on with joy. That wish was not easy for Sibily to hear. She loved him deeply, and the thought of losing him broke her heart. But Robert wanted her to remember that life doesn't end with death. He wanted her to believe that his love would stay with her forever, even if he was no longer beside her. He often reminded her of the times they had shared, the trips, the laughter, the quiet mornings together. He wanted those memories to be her strength. His final wish was that she should not hide away but continue to shine, to inspire others with her art, and to live with the same courage she had always shown. In those last conversations, Robert's voice carried both sorrow and peace. He wasn't afraid of leaving this world, he was only afraid of leaving her without comfort. His words were not rehearsed or poetic. They were simple, heartfelt, and true, the words of a man who had loved deeply and wanted that love to guide the woman he left behind. The beauty of Robert and Sibyle's story lies in its simplicity. It wasn't a Hollywood romance filled with scandals or headlines. It was two people who found each other later in life and built something real. And in the end, that love became Robert's greatest legacy. When he finally passed, Sibily carried his wish like a secret promise. She knew that he wanted her to continue, and though the pain of loss was unbearable, his words gave her strength. She picked up her brushes, she returned to her art, and in every color she painted, she felt him there. Robert Redford may have left the world, but his final wish ensured that his love would live on. For Sibily, it was not just a memory. It was a guiding light, a reminder that true love never fades. And for all who hear their story, it is proof that even legends are human, and their final words can touch the deepest parts of our hearts. As Robert Redford's final days drew closer, there was a stillness about him. He had lived through nearly 9 decades of fame, love, and loss, but now, time felt slower. For him, every sunrise mattered, every conversation with Sibily mattered, and every moment of silence carried meaning. He was a man who had given so much to the world, yet now he thought only of the people closest to him. Redford never liked to dwell on regret, but in those quiet weeks he admitted there were things he wished had been different. The loss of his son Scott when he was just a baby remained the deepest wound of his life. He once told a friend that no amount of fame, no number of awards, could ever fill the emptiness that loss created in him. As his health weakened, that memory came back often. He wanted Sibily to know that love and family were the only true treasures one could hold on to. He also carried the weight of years when his career overshadowed his role as a husband and father. His first marriage had ended under the pressure of his rising stardom, and though he remained close to his children, he often confessed he had not been around as much as he wanted to be. In his last conversations with Sibily, he urged her to remind others of something he had learned too late, that success without presence means little. But regret was only part of his story. Redford had always been a man of vision, someone who wanted to leave behind more than films. With Sibily by his side, he built Sundance not only as a film festival but as a place where creativity could thrive away from Hollywood's spotlight. In his last weeks, he spoke often about this legacy. He wanted Sibily to help protect that spirit of independent art, because he believed stories mattered more than anything. Sibily, an artist herself, understood this completely. She had seen Robert pour his heart into Sundance, into nurturing young filmmakers, and into giving voices to those who might otherwise be ignored. She promised him she would carry that vision forward in her own way, through her art and through supporting the dreams of others. To him, this was the greatest comfort. Their conversations weren't always heavy. Sometimes, Robert simply wanted to remember. He would sit with Sibily and recall the dusty landscapes of Utah, the thrill of his first big break in Hollywood, or the joy of working alongside friends like Paul Newman. His eyes would brighten when he spoke of those times, but always, he returned to her, reminding her that she had been the true gift of his later life. As his health grew fragile, Robert became more protective of Sibily. He told her he worried not about himself but about how she would face the world without him. "Don't let grief take your light," he whispered more than once. He wanted her to keep painting, to keep showing the beauty of the natural world through her art, because he believed her work would inspire others long after he was gone. It was not only a husband's plea,